MH370 mystery cargo. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur with 239 souls aboard, destined for Beijing. But the flight never arrived. Among the scattered wreckage and unanswered questions, a particular mystery stands out: an unlisted, mysterious cargo added to the official manifest only after the airliner took off. Did the cargo of Flight MH370 play a role in its disappearance? The Boeing 777's last communication came 38 minutes after takeoff, followed by an unexplained westward turn. An hour later, MH370 vanished from radar over the Indian Ocean. Despite extensive searches, the fate of the flight and its passengers remains a mystery. Relatives of the passengers have long insisted that the flight carried 2.2 tons of unaccounted cargo, absent from the initial manifests released by Malaysia Airlines. Records indicate that over 2 tons of, quote, radio accessories and chargers were on board but never officially documented. Could one of these undisclosed devices have malfunctioned, caught fire, or interfered with the aircraft's systems? Another theory points to a hazardous combination of batteries and fruit. According to the manifest, Flight MH370 transported 221 kilograms of lithium batteries, known for their flammability, and 5 tons of mangosteens, a tropical fruit. Some experts speculated that juice from the fruit might have leaked, reacting chemically with the batteries and igniting a catastrophic fire. While failing to explain the plane's course change, this scenario could account for the loss of communication and subsequent disappearance. A later report clarified that the batteries and fruit were securely stored apart, making the possibility of such a chemical reaction highly unlikely. Among the most intriguing aspects of MH370's cargo is a mysterious 89-kilogram load listed on the manifest only after the plane was airborne. This anomaly, uncovered by a French investigation in 2019, long after other nations had ceased their inquiries, remains unresolved. While it might be a simple error, some theorists have seized on this extra load as proof of hijacking. According to this unproven and speculative theory, the additional cargo could have been a stowaway equipped with an oxygen tank who depressurized the plane, cutting off oxygen for the passengers and crew. This, they suggest, would have allowed hijackers, possibly Russian operatives, to disable tracking systems and divert MH370 to Kazakhstan, aiming to shift global attention away from Russia's annexation of Crimea. Kidnapped by a Soviet submarine. On the afternoon of March 23, 1951, a U.S. Air Force aircraft, designated 490244, undertook a deliberate ditching into the frigid waters of the North Atlantic. The ditching, along with the subsequent evacuation, was initially successful. Survivors, safely aboard life rafts, were sighted by a responding aircraft shortly after the crash. Yet when rescue craft arrived the next day, both the plane and its occupants had vanished without a trace. For over 50 years, the families of those on board have grappled with the haunting question: what happened to the passengers and crew of aircraft 490244? The initial crisis surrounding the C-124 Globemaster is well documented and seemingly straightforward. The plane had departed from Walker Air Force Base in Roswell, New Mexico, destined for an RAF base in Suffolk, England. After a brief stop at Limestone Air Force Base in Maine, the Globemaster embarked on its Atlantic crossing. At 1 p.m., the plane made radio contact with the U.S. Coast Guard weather ship, COSCO, issuing a Mayday distress signal. The crew reported a fire in the cargo hold and provided their position. Shortly after, the aircraft hailed COSCO again. The fire was uncontrollable, and Major Robert S. Bell, the pilot, had decided to ditch the plane while daylight remained. The aircraft reported its final position as 50 degrees 22 minutes north and 27 degrees 5 minutes west. A B-29 Superfortress in the vicinity, alerted by COSCO, rerouted to assist. Upon arrival, it observed life rafts filled with survivors and the plane still afloat. However, when rescue craft reached the location the next day, they found no trace of the aircraft or its occupants. One explanation is the time lapse between the sighting and the rescue operation. The rafts could have drifted from the search area, and the plane may have sunk. Debris recovered from the aircraft indicated that the fuel cells in the wings caught fire after the ditching. Could this fire have led to an explosion, killing the survivors and sinking the rafts? This theory seems improbable, as it is unlikely to have obliterated all evidence of the survivors. retired USAF Master Sergeant Keith Amsden has since offered a more clandestine explanation. He believes the plane was carrying a secret nuclear payload, which delayed the search efforts. The standard procedure for an aircraft in distress carrying a nuclear device, codenamed Broken Arrow, was to jettison the device and, if necessary, abandon the aircraft. Although Amsden has no direct proof, he notes that several passengers had experience with nuclear weapons. It was common in the 1950s for the U.S. to transport nuclear materials to Britain, and fear of a potential nuclear detonation might explain the delay between the B-29 sighting and the rescue attempt. This theory could also account for a discrepancy in the official report. Initially, USAF officials claimed they were unaware of the plane's distress until it failed to arrive in England, justifying the delay. The COSCO's transmission, documented in the ship's logs, was initially omitted. Another theory focuses on the passengers rather than the cargo. The plane carried officers, pilots, and other personnel experienced in nuclear and aviation matters. This made the aircraft a prime target for Soviet intervention. At the time, Soviet submarines and aircraft were active in the area. According to this theory, a Soviet submarine might have intercepted the survivors, capturing them to extract their knowledge of nuclear weaponry and U.S. Air Force operations. A final theory suggests sabotage by an unknown intelligence agency. Several clues point in this direction, including traces of chemicals consistent with a 4-pound M50 incendiary bomb from World War II. However, the most unusual clue was a note supposedly found inside a sealed metal tin can on a beach in County Galway, Ireland, several months after the crash. Allegedly written by one of the passengers, the notes read, quote, "Cullen is worried when 300 miles west of Ireland, Globemaster alters course for no apparent reason. We are going north. Have to be careful. We are under surveillance. Pieces of wreckage will be found, but are not of G-Master. A terrible drama is being enacted on this liner." This cryptic message, mentioned in the accident report, but never officially copied, has since disappeared. Flying Tiger Line Flight 739. On March 15, 1962, at precisely 3:39 p.m. GMT, flight control operators at Andersen Air Base in Guam realized they had a significant problem. Flying Tiger Line Flight 379 had gone radio silent. The operators had attempted several times to get a position update from the flight, but their calls went unanswered. Just over an hour earlier, the pilot had reported their position, approximately 280 nautical miles west of Guam. After that, silence. When the plane failed to land in the Philippines as scheduled, a massive search operation involving the U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, and Marines was launched. Despite their efforts, the plane was never found. The disappearance of Flight 739 was made even more consequential by its secret cargo. 3 South Vietnamese military officials and 93 U.S. Army Rangers, all en route to South Vietnam. The use of the civilian airline, Flying Tiger, was a calculated move by the U.S. government, providing plausible deniability for its escalating military involvement in South Vietnam. Although official combat troops had not yet been sent, hundreds of advisors were deployed to train and lead ARBN forces against the Viet Cong. The 93 Rangers aboard Flight 739 were communication specialists, sent to replace others who had been training South Vietnamese soldiers in counterinsurgency. The assumed fate of Flight 739 took a darker turn, with eyewitness reports from a passing ship. Crew members on the tanker ship Lenzen, traveling through the South Pacific at 3:30 GMT, saw a vapor trail in the sky a few miles north of their position. The vapor trail, moving from east to west, suddenly disappeared behind a cloud, followed by a blinding explosion that lit up the ship's deck. Investigators later confirmed that the location of the explosion coincided with Flight 739's flight path. The consensus, Flight 739 had exploded in midair. Without any wreckage, the cause of the explosion remains a mystery. However, an incident the day before, halfway across the world, provides a possible clue. Another Flying Tiger Line plane, the same model as Flight 739, crashed while landing in the Aleutian Islands, carrying secret military documents. The crash resulted in a fire that killed 1 passenger. Both planes had taken off from the same airport, encountered difficulties, and carried military personnel and documents. These parallels suggest the possibility of hijacking or sabotage. Hijacking seems unlikely. Subduing a plane full of Army Rangers would require a sizable force, and no additional person was reported among the injured or dead on the Aleutian flight. Sabotage, on the other hand, seems more plausible. Both planes were housed in the same location and maintained by the same airline. Official records indicate that Flight 739 was left unattended on a poorly lit tarmac for over an hour before departure. A well-placed explosive device, combined with the highly flammable aviation fuel, could have caused the catastrophic explosion witnessed by the Linson crew. Yet, the trail of evidence ends there. Who planted the bomb, if there indeed was a bomb, and whether the explosion witnessed involved Flight 739 remain unanswered questions. Russia's giant cargo. On March 21, 2024, United States military intelligence detected an AN-124 cargo plane, currently the largest in the world following the destruction of the only AN-225 in existence, heading towards Vladivostok in eastern Russia. The flight path suggested it had taken off from somewhere in North Korea. Given the ongoing war in Ukraine and the stringent international sanctions banning trade between Russia and North Korea, this flight was a blatant defiance of international law. The incident raises a crucial question for the US and its allies. What cargo was the behemoth bringing back to Russia? The AN-124, capable of carrying 150 tons of military cargo, is a formidable asset. It can transport anything from missiles and artillery to fighter planes. This particular plane is not the first Russian aircraft suspected of ferrying supplies from North Korea. An earlier aircraft, caught with its transponder active, was detected landing in Pyongyang itself. However, the AN-124's immense capacity makes its presence particularly alarming. In recent months, North Korea has resumed flaunting its ballistic missile program. While these missiles lack nuclear warheads, their substantial payloads and potential for mass production pose a significant strategic threat. South Korean intelligence agencies reportedly observed 50-foot-long cargo being loaded onto an AN-124 jet, believed to be Hwasong-11 series missiles. Although there's no irrefutable evidence confirming the nature of the cargo, its very presence is cause for concern. Its deployment suggests that a considerable amount of military material could have been transported from North Korea to Russia, potentially fueling the latter's offensive against Ukraine. El Al Flight 1862. On October 4th, 1992, the Bijlmermeer neighborhood of Amsterdam was rocked by a cataclysmic explosion. A Boeing 747, operated by Israel's El Al airline, crashed just 15 minutes into its flight back to Israel. The aircraft had lost 2 engines and sustained severe wing damage before plummeting into an apartment building, incinerating dozens of units and officially claiming 39 lives on the ground. However, the actual death toll likely approached 200, given the area's large undocumented immigrant population. In the ensuing months and years, residents of Bijlmermeer began to suffer from a number of strange physical symptoms, ranging from general malaise to chronic respiratory infections. This alarming spike in health issues spurred public outcry and expert investigations. What had Flight 1862 been carrying when it met its fiery end? The initial clues pointed to a troubling cargo. Flight 1862 did not merely lose engine power. An engine on the left wing detached entirely, ripping off a second engine in the process. Investigations revealed that the fuselage pins securing the engines had ruptured under the strain of an overweight load. Clearly, something in the plane's hold was far beyond the allowable weight limit. A year after the crash, the health complaints began in earnest. Insomnia, impotence, bowel problems, and respiratory issues were rampant. Despite the Dutch government's assurances that no toxic chemicals were aboard the plane, the public remained unconvinced. In 1993, a troubling fact surfaced. The aircraft had used depleted uranium as a counterweight in its tail, a common practice for Boeing 747s at the time. Studies on the potential health effects of this uranium went ignored until 1997, when an expert testified before the Israeli parliament that the combination of a jet fuel explosion and uranium could indeed yield toxic consequences. Further investigations uncovered a previously undisclosed cargo, key ingredients for manufacturing sarin gas. In 1998, a Dutch newspaper reported that Flight 1862 had carried 3 of the 4 components needed to produce sarin, including 50 gallons of dimethyl methylphosphonate. The government insisted that the amount on board was only sufficient for testing purposes and posed minimal risk. Yet, the persistent health decline among Bijlmermeer residents told a different story, leaving many questioning the true impact of Flight 1862's cargo on their lives. As the years pass, the haunting question persists. What did the cargo of Flight 1862 do to the people of Bijlmermeer? What do you think happened to Flight MH370? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching Dark 5. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of this world and beyond.